First, I would like to read from Genesis chapter 13, verses 5 through 13. Genesis 13, 5 through 13. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. The Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So Abram said to Lot, "Let us not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot looked out and saw the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, towards Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The two parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. I'd like to turn to Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 13. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. "My lords," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning." "No," they answered, "we will spend the night in the square." But he insisted so strongly that they insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men of every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called out to Lot, "Where are the men who came with you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you want with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under my protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they replied. And they said, "This fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play judge? We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot to move forward and to break the door down. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. And then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so they could not find the door. The two men said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here, son-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against his people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it." Today we're going to talk about Lot, Abram's nephew. I want to say first, technology is an amazing thing, especially when I just get to make stuff up. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Because I want to tell you that I recently have been exchanging emails with Lot, Abram's nephew. Really? In fact, I have an email that Lot had written to me, and I want to read this letter to you right now. "Dear Brian," that's me. "Well, I settled in a new place. And I've got to tell you, it is great. The landscape is breathtaking. This has got to be what the Garden of Eden looked like. This is way better than where we were staying in Egypt before. There's plenty of space. The neighbors are a little rowdy. They were blaring their stereo till 2 a.m. last night. My wife almost called the cops on them. But other than that, I couldn't ask for a better spot. It was even Uncle Abe's idea for me to come here. Yeah, I chose the spot, but Uncle Abe gave me first pick, which was decent of him. We were having some problems. Uncle Abe and I have been traveling together for, how long? Over 20 years, I guess. Abe's been a great uncle. He took me in when I was in real trouble and helped me get set up in life. Abe has a head for business. Sheep are his big commodity. He's got too many sheep to actually do any shepherding now, but he's great at administration. He showed me how to work with people and improve the livestock. I wouldn't have near what I have today if it weren't for Uncle Abe. Actually, that's where the problem came from. We got too rich. Uncle Abe taught me about loyalty to your people and how they'll be loyal to you. Well, my people were loyal to me, and Uncle Abe's people were loyal to him. My shepherds were trying to find the best grazing land for my sheep, and his shepherds were trying to find the best grazing land for their sheep. They ran out of space, and the herdsmen started arguing. For a while it was funny, mostly jokes and harmless pranks. Then things started to get out of hand. It started with jokes about how the shepherds smelled like the sheep, which is true, so not really that big of an insult. And a few practical jokes, mostly involving manure. But it escalated to screaming matches and a couple of fistfights. Uncle Abe realized that our people needed more space. So he suggested we split up. And he was really nice about it too. He let me choose. He said if I went right, he'd go left. If I went left, he'd go right. And that was good of him. I mean, he did take me in and all, and he's given me a lot over the years. If he wanted to, he could have decided what way to go and told me which way I was going, and I'd have to deal with it. But he didn't do that. He let me choose. I suppose he kind of owed me. After all, he's the one that got us kicked out of Egypt in the first place. But the whole left-right thing was a no-brainer. The Valley of Jordan is one of the best places I have ever seen. Of course I came here. And I've got to say it's one of the best choices I've ever made. Okay, so I'm not a fan of the neighbors. Some of my new friends are a little underhanded, a little dishonest. Fine. If that's the price I have to pay for a land like this, so be it. Write again when I get a chance. Sincerely, Lot. I have another letter for Lot. This one was dated a few months after the last one. Dear Brian. Me again. Things have calmed down now. Enough time has passed, I think I can tell you what's going on. When last I wrote, I was one of the richest people in a beautiful land. And now I'm living in a cave. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Everything seemed to be going fine. I was living in Sodom, business was thriving. Okay, the neighbors were a little worse than what I let on before. I mean, yeah, they were violent people. You couldn't trust anybody. Sin was rampant. I suppose it really couldn't have been much worse. And one day everything fell apart. Started simple enough. I was sitting out by the gate and these two guys walked up. They didn't have any food, so I invited them to spend the night or have supper with me. We ate and they said they were going to sleep in the city square. Well, they weren't from around here because everybody in Sodom knows you don't sleep in the town square. It's not safe. It took some talking, but I convinced them to spend the night with me. And I thought we were going to make it through okay. I remember just settling down for bed when there was a knock on the door. And I knew things were going bad before I even opened the door. I knew the kind of people that live in Sodom. They didn't mess with me because I brought money into the area, but outsiders, I knew things were going bad, but couldn't have guessed how bad. A crowd was there demanding that I turn my guests over to them. They even said they wanted to have sex with these men. And I tried to talk them out of it. But they wouldn't budge. Then the two men pulled me inside and closed the door. And for some reason, no one tried to follow us. The men said that I had to get out of the city and take anyone I cared with me. They said God's judgment was coming and that they said it was such force I believed them. And I tried to tell people. Both my daughters are engaged, so I tried to tell their future husbands, but they didn't believe me. I have to admit, I sounded a little crazy myself. When no one took me seriously, I started to doubt it. But the two men found me and my family, and they all but forced us out of the city. And they said to run and don't look back. We ran, and there was an explosion behind us. My wife looked back, and I never saw her again. For a while, we stayed in the town of Zoar with my two daughters, near where Sodom used to be, but even that didn't last. I have to admit, in the long run, moving to Sodom was not the best choice I've ever made. I didn't do anything that bad, but I got caught up with everything that was happening around me. And now I'm stuck. If you want to write back, just send a letter. Past where Sodom used to be, fourth cave on the left. Sincerely, Lot. Today we're going to talk about Lot. And throughout the Bible, we're only ever told one thing Lot did. Told lots of things that happened to Lot or things that happened while Lot was around, but Lot ever only made one real choice. Lot chose where he would live. He chose to live in the town of Sodom. And that choice led to his downfall. Now, it all started with Abram and Lot. They had become wealthy men. And wealth at the time wasn't judged by the stock market or saving bonds. Wealth was found in how much livestock someone owned and how many servants a person had. And Abram's and Lot's wealth had reached a critical mass. The land couldn't support both of them. So they decided to part ways. And Abram told Lot to go one direction, and Abram said he would go a different direction. Lot decided to move to the town of Sodom. And he went there because it was a lush land, a place where he thought he could earn more money. But he didn't think about the type of people he was associating himself with. He didn't think about the cost of living in Sodom. Lot only thought about what living there could bring him. He didn't think about how it would affect his life or his relationship with God. And because of this, like with all sin, it came with a cost. And it's a cost Lot couldn't see until it was too late. The cost on Lot was corruption. We're told in the book of 1 Corinthians, where Paul wrote, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." And we see this in Lot, by associating with the wickedness of Sodom. And we're told plainly in the Bible that the people of Sodom were wicked and did evil in the sight of the Lord. By associating with them, Lot became corrupt in his own life. Now, he was not as corrupt as the people of Sodom. God stepped in to directly punish people for wickedness twice in the entire history of the world. Once was during the flood, when only Noah survived. The only other time God directly punished a large group of people for their sin was in Sodom and Gomorrah. It seems that God only acts in such a dramatic way when there's no longer any possibility that people will turn back to what is good. Lot wasn't that far gone. He had been corrupted by the people around him, but he wasn't beyond redemption. And clearly the angels did not believe that he deserved to die with the people of Sodom, and they gave him the opportunity to be saved. Still, while Lot wasn't as bad as the people of Sodom, that's setting the bar really low. Lot still had become corrupt. During the attack on his house, at one point, he offered his own daughters to be essentially raped by the crowd. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on Lot because of this. I can understand in that moment, in such a severe circumstance, it might be hard to think clearly. But the mere fact that this even entered his mind reveals just how corrupt Lot's thinking had become. Bad company corrupts good character. We see that in Lot. His own character became corrupt. And he suffered in that, and he suffered the punishment that came to the people around him as well. Now, this is an extreme case. However, extreme cases can be useful in identifying patterns so we can see the more subtle realities in our lives today. Because it's still true today that bad company corrupts good character. Perhaps not as extreme as we see in Lot, but it still happens in our lives today. For better or worse, people change people. The people we have in our lives affect who we become as people. I heard another preacher put it this way. Show me your 5 closest friends. I'll tell you who you are. The people we spend our time with affects who we are, and it reveals who we are. Who do you spend your time with? Who are your closest friends outside your family? Okay, granted, at this moment you might not have the time to take a full stock of who you're spending your time with, but consider this in the coming days. Who is it in your life that affects who you are? Who is influencing you? Because people change people. For better or worse, the people we spend our lives with make us who we are. Okay, so how do we recognize, how do we identify a destructive relationship? Lot was an extreme case. He clearly should have known that the people of Sodom were corrupt individuals. Most of the time in our lives today, it's not so clear-cut. Most people aren't all good or all bad. Most of our relationships are with people who are a mixed bag, a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative. So how do we identify relationships that are mainly negative, that are having a destructive effect on our character? Now, there's no set rule here, but I think I can give you a few warning signs to watch out for. Bad company that corrupts good character. If we consistently feel agitated or downhearted or nervous after spending time with someone, we find that our language or our thoughts are more vulgar once we've been around this person. If we find ourselves violating areas of conscience or making questionable decisions that never would have been an option before, if we are more lax about areas of weakness in our lives, if we are more likely to rationalize bad behavior that was never an option before, if we're more easily annoyed, especially with our family members, after spending time with this person, if our thoughts or outlook on life is more negative or more depressed when we've been around this person. If you see any of those warning signs in your life, then there's a good chance there's a relationship in your life that you need to take a hard look at. There's a good chance there's a relationship in your life that is having a negative effect on who you are. Okay, so what do we do about that? Now maybe this isn't you. Maybe you're looking at your life right now and saying, I have a pretty healthy balance in my relationships, and I don't see any particular relationship that's causing harm to my life. If so, great. That's wonderful. But maybe as I went through those warning signs, one name just jumped right to the front of your mind. Maybe there is a relationship in your life that you immediately recognize as having a negative effect on your character. Or maybe in the coming days as you reflect on this, perhaps there will be one name, one relationship that you recognize as causing problems in your life. So how do we deal with that? First, let me say this is one of the most difficult lines for a Christian to walk. We're called to be in this world, but not of this world. We're called to influence the world around us, but not be influenced by the world around us. So there's no set rule here. God has promised that he will give wisdom to those who ask for it. So if you have a relationship in your life that's causing you concern, the first step is to ask God for wisdom. But I think I can give you at least 4 guidelines on how to respond if you have a relationship in your life that you feel is destructive to your character. First, set healthy boundaries. Sometimes we simply need to recognize that there are people we can be around, but we can't let them into our lives. That means there are topics we just don't talk about with that person. Or there are situations we avoid, that perhaps this is someone we can see at work but not invite to go out socially. Perhaps this can be a friend from school who's not welcome in our home. Sometimes all we need is to set healthy boundaries. Second, avoid destructive settings. Avoid situations that you know bring out the worst in you. If I know someone who, when he plays basketball, brings out the worst in him, and that in turn brings out the worst in me, I need to not play basketball with that person. Or perhaps know someone who I can see and talk to on the street, but if I'm in his home, that changes things. I need to recognize settings that are destructive for my character and avoid those settings. Avoid destructive situations. Third, create physical distance. Most of the time, if there is a relationship in your life that is destructive to your character, just setting boundaries or avoiding dangerous situations isn't going to be enough. If you have a relationship in your life, a friendship, an acquaintance that is having a negative effect on you, most of the time we'll need to set physical distance. We'll need to spend less time around this person. The most effective way to reduce the influence a person has on us is to reduce the time we spend with that person. Sometimes we need to create physical distance. Fourth, run for it. Sometimes the only right response to a destructive relationship is to just get out of that relationship. Some friendships, some acquaintances are just not redeemable. I'm reminded of Joseph, the son of Jacob, when he was living in Egypt. He was a slave in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife wanted to entice Joseph into an adulterous relationship. At one point, Potiphar's wife grabbed onto Joseph's shirt and tried to basically pull him into her bed. When he discovered he couldn't get out of her grip, he got out of his shirt. He slipped his shirt out and just ran out the door. Sometimes that's the only response. Sometimes there are relationships that are just negative and destructive for our lives, that they bring us into negative ways of thinking, that they are damaging to our character. And the only thing we can do is just get out of that relationship. In such circumstances, we might need to talk to that person to tell them what we're doing, though I'll say most of the time, if a friendship is genuinely not redeemable, talking about it's not going to help much. Sometimes all we can do is just run for it. Now, say that if we are going to limit destructive relationships, it's also helpful to build constructive relationships. As we remove a relationship that is negative in our lives, we need to fill that void with a relationship that is positive. Do you know someone who you think would be a positive influence in your life, who has an interest that you share? Build on that interest. Or perhaps you need to find a new interest to build relationships that build you up. People change people, for better or worse. Good relationships build us up, bad ones tear us down. Bad company corrupts good character. Good company builds good character. So I want to close today with 3 questions for everyone in this room. First, is there a friendship that you need to invest more in your life? Do you know someone who builds you up in your walk with Christ, and you need to invest in that relationship? Spend a little more time with that person, build a shared interest with them. Second, is there a relationship you need to invest less in? Is there a person in your life who you recognize drags you down? Is there a person you know that when you spend time with this person, it has a negative effect on your outlook in life? And third and finally, what is one step you can take towards building healthy relationships? Community is a choice that we make. What's one thing you can do to make a healthy choice about your community? We're about to stand for invitation hymn. And as we stand to sing, if you need to start with a community of Christ, if you need to build a community in this church, either by being baptized into Christ or becoming a member of this church, if you need to start in that community, you have an opportunity today. I ask you, stand with me now for invitation hymn, which is Silent Night, and we'll sing just the first verse.